The story of Dean Martin and his wife, Jean Beager, remains one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking and quietly devastating tragedies. Dean Martin, often remembered for his effortless charm, velvety voice, and easygoing humor, lived a life that seemed glamorous on the surface, but behind the scenes, he battled emotional wounds few ever saw. His marriage to Jean was considered one of the most beautiful love stories in show business. They were the golden couple, adored by fans and respected in the industry. But as the pressures of fame grew and Martin's career demanded more of his time, the couple drifted apart. Although they divorced in 1973 after 24 years of marriage, the love between them never truly faded. Friends said Dean never stopped caring for Jean, and she continued to love him quietly from a distance. Their lives remained intertwined through their children, shared memories, and the deep bond they once believed would last forever. Tragedy struck when their son, Dean Paul Martin, died in a 1987 military jet crash, shattering both of them beyond repair. The loss sent Dean Martin into a downward spiral from which he never fully recovered. Once vibrant and full of life, he became withdrawn, turning to alcohol and isolating himself from the world. He continued to perform, but his spark was gone. The death of his son left a wound that time simply could not heal. Jean, devastated by losing her child, carried her grief quietly, leaning on faith and family. Though divorced, Dean and Jean found themselves connected once again by shared heartbreak, often communicating privately as they tried to understand a loss that made no sense. As years passed, Dean's health deteriorated. He struggled with lung issues due to decades of smoking, and his once strong body began to fail. By the early 1990s, he rarely left his home, preferring solitude and keeping the curtains drawn. The man who once filled rooms with laughter now lived in near silence. Still, Jean remained a comforting presence, visiting occasionally and speaking to him through relatives. Despite living separate lives, their emotional connection proved unbreakable. They were no longer husband and wife, but the love remained, quiet, steady, and wounded. In 1995, Dean Martin died on Christmas morning at the age of 78, alone in his Beverly Hills home. His passing brought an outpouring of grief from fans worldwide, but those closest to him knew he had been dying inside for many years. The loss of his son, the fading of his career, and the heartbreak of his divorce all contributed to a loneliness he never escaped. Jean, devastated by his death, mourned deeply. She had built a life of her own after their divorce, but Dean's passing still felt like losing a part of herself. For her, the story didn't end there. Just 1 year later, in 2016, Jean passed away at age 89, quietly and peacefully. Those who knew her said she never fully recovered from the losses she endured and that Dean always held a piece of her heart. Their story is remembered today not just as a Hollywood romance, but as a reminder that even the brightest stars carry darkness behind the spotlight. Dean Martin's effortless charm masked deep emotional wounds, and Jean's quiet grace hid years of private heartbreak. Their love, though imperfect, remained powerful enough to bind them long after the cameras stopped rolling. In the end, the awful tragedies they endured defined their later years, and their deaths closed the chapter on one of Hollywood's most bittersweet love stories, one filled with unforgettable music, deep affection, and a sorrow neither ever escaped.